Hey everybody, welcome to The Truth About Dyslexia. In today's episode, I have a recap with the awesome Philip Long, who we had on. We just worked out it was nearly 12 months ago, and how easy time flies. It only feels like we were doing this call maybe a month or two ago, having a chat about life, and then like that, it is gone. And more things have changed in Philip's life, so I wanted to have him back on to tell his story and how much has changed. I had to make sure he didn't tell me too much before this interview, because like a good dyslexic, it would have gone out the other ear and we'd have forgotten to tell you, the awesome listeners. Let's get into today's podcast and welcome in Philip. Tell us, how have you been since we last caught up?
Yeah, Stephen, it's been really good. Thank you again. The honor to be a part of the podcast again. I can't believe it's been a full 12 months since then, and great to hear just all the great work that you're doing. The other episodes of just other dyslexic people thriving and doing really well. But yeah, so I've been really well. I think last time we talked, I was working in software sales, and then quite a little bit after that, I would say probably about 2 months after that, I got an opportunity to go work at a private school that was completely designed for helping kids with learning disabilities. And I was brought in to be their dyslexia specialist and really help them introduce them to technology and software. And I have some background there's a nonprofit arm to the school. So I have some background as well with fundraising. So I said, I can come in and help you guys do some fundraising and really share with the kids. Got an opportunity to, I met him actually through my pastor, and it's a Christian school. He told me that, hey, I know this Christian school that I think might be a good fit for you. I know you do software, but somebody I want you to meet. Right. And so there's the power of relationships, right? So I came in and talked with him a little bit about my journey through school. Guys, with a lot of the hearers actually heard last time we ended up speaking, and really just shared with him my story, right? What was it like for, going through school? What were my challenges that I had? And really going back to basically third grade again, like I mentioned in my last episode, and coming from that place and graduating with honors, and finishing my master's and everything else. So really just share with him my
Fantastic.
story.
And for anybody who's
Yeah,
for let me terribly butt in here, Philip, because you know how I
you're okay.
operate. I'll just jump on in. Everybody, everyone who's listening, I'll put the link to Philip's last episode down below, which has his full story. I always remember, was it learning Chinese? That was the big one that I
Yeah,
always remembered,
yeah.
made me think how you're teaching yourself Chinese. And I was like, the idea of learning another language at this age just shocks me, just scares me to death. And so if you do
Yeah.
want to learn about that, guys, I will link that in the show notes. But sorry for interrupting, Phil. I just want to make sure people knew that.
No, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And feel free to do it anytime you need to. Yeah. Well, just shared with the founder of the school what my journey was. And he said, well, I want you to be able to come to school and I want you to teach our kids exactly what you did to be successful. Because what you have accomplished is amazing. And we're working really hard with our kids. But, obviously, you can have all of the training behind you, but no one knows what it's like to walk in the shoes of dyslexia as the person that does. Like you can know clinically and textbook wise, hey, this is this challenge, that is that challenge. But as dyslexics are, we are typically inventors. So we invent our way through workarounds and everything else to get to the success that we want to be able to get to. And so instead of reinventing the wheel, he's like, well, can you come in? And can you really help us, make sure that we're doing everything we can to help get our kids to be successful like you are? Yeah.
It's awesome. What an amazing, happening, right? Like
Mhm.
I had that feeling last time we talked, you were ready for a change and to do something more aligned with helping. And
Mhm.
it is amazing how, whatever you want to call it, the universe, God, it
Yeah.
lines things up, right? It just lines things up the
Mhm.
way you want it.
Yeah.
And that chance to help. And like with dyslexia, there's such an issue at the moment in the world, I think, with people not being diagnosed. Like I
Mhm.
listened to a stat the other day that said something like 2 out of 10 dyslexic kids get diagnosed correctly at a young age, 2 out of 10, which, when you think of the population, they say give or take 10% of the population, depending who you speak to, has dyslexia.
Mhm.
We're missing 8 in 100 from being diagnosed, which
Mhm.
is not surprising, the amount of adults I meet with undiagnosed dyslexia, right? And so
Yeah.
the work you're doing with kids is amazing. And I guess from that experience, what have you, is there any, what lessons have you learned that you could share with the listeners? This is the question today.
Yeah, the lessons that I've learned, that's really a question. I've learned that although dyslexia affects students in different ways, technology is truly the bridge that helps them get to learning. Like for example, I asked the director of the school because Lighthouse Christian School is been around for about 22 years, and here in Florida, Northeast Florida, and we're one school with 8 different locations. So I met with one of the directors, and I said, I want to work with your students who are just really, really struggling. And so there was one young man I met with. I started working with him, and he was in the 5th grade, but reading on the first to second grade level. And some of the kids end up coming to us. That's how they come into our school, right? And so we just have to kind of meet them where they are and help get them where they need to be. And so just really smart guy, spoke really well, but just was really struggling in language arts and reading. And so has ADHD as well. So I had to one thing I've learned was how to adapt myself to their learning styles and what they needed in the moment, right? So we would typically meet in the library, and then there would be a bell, and there would be a change of classes. And so he needed to look out the window or the door and see what was going on. So we would take our little 5 seconds to look out the door. So he would hear something and say, I was like, I know you're burning up inside. Go ahead and turn and look. All right. They're just changing classes. You good? Okay, let's get back into it. So being very adaptable to, okay, he's having this moment. His brain needs to know what's going on. So letting him do that, number one, and then really introducing them to the power of speech to text software and how that made the biggest difference in the world. So let's go to an example of that. So we were working on a particular project with him, and it was where it was the word and then it was A or B, and with A or B you had to choose which one was the correct answer. Okay, and so and which one most closely aligned with the definition of the word. He's and you know how it is, like we can be just wildly guessing, hopefully which one to be right, and at me looking at the ceiling, looking at the lights, and I'm like, none of the answers are there. Let's focus. Everything is right here on the computer. Okay,
Mm,
so refocusing. We started out with some demo software with the program called Read and Write. Some of the listeners may be familiar with that. And it works really well inside of like Google Docs. And so brought in this software just as a demo to kind of just see how he would do with it. So we highlighted the word, brought up a picture dictionary, and then we get a very broad text definition of the word. And so he saw the picture, got the definition, and you should have seen him. He lit up because at that moment he realized, wait a minute, I'm understanding, right? You could see the light bulb moment. And then from that moment on, he
mm,
saw the definition. We listened to the word, we listened to them, and I said, which one most sounds like it, A or B? And we went through that. He went from getting majority of them wrong to turning around and getting, I think it was like 23 out of 25 right after introducing the software to give him that broader picture, broader understanding, connecting really all Cyril's major senses. He was listening, he was seeing the picture that was similar to the word, and then being able to bring that broader definition in, and then just have audio happening every step of the way. He began to really excel. And so it was just really cool to say, this is what I did for myself. Coming back into college, for folks who remember my story before, coming back into college on my 5th grade reading level, and then using that software to help me able to function at a college level. The same thing I'm able to do for him, but it's happening at a lot sooner where the gap is a lot smaller than, 3rd grade and like sophomore year was for me. So really cool to see me just working with them for about 30 minutes, 3 times a week, and the growth that the students I worked with was able to see. So really be able to see that difference. And then working with the older students, being able to see that difference as well, and how they were able to go ahead and continue to grow with that.
That's brilliant, mate. Like that's and like just touching on that first point around being strict, with learning. I think that's
Hmm.
the biggest key is don't, and I see this way too often is dyslexic kids can be frustrating, right? Even dyslexic
Hmm.
adults, let's be honest, we are all frustrating. But
Yeah.
we don't really work well with being told off. We're
Hmm.
not like a cat where you can spray us with a bottle of water and we'll
Hmm.
understand what's wrong. Like many of us struggle with the cause and effect. We
Yeah.
don't really connect the dots with cause and effect. So if you're just being what they deem as mean to them, they don't understand that it's related to an action they've just taken. The cause and
Hmm.
effect bubble just gets broken. And
Hmm.
like this was a huge lesson in the dyslexic mind is you've got to you're better to sometimes let them turn, get it out of the way, get it out of their head, then come back. And then you've got X amount of attention and focus rather than letting them feel like they're being knocked down every time. Because it's actually not the knockdown that hurts them, it's that they don't understand why they're being knocked down, even if it seems obvious from the outside. So I just want to make that awareness because it's a really good point you made. And then with the software, I got to connect you with this guy called Paul. I can't remember his last name, but I will find it because he's developing a piece of software for dyslexics.
Okay.
And I think you would be so well connected with him because you'd be able to give him your opinion.
Hmm.
He's testing it over in New Zealand at the moment,
Okay.
and the kind of concept with it is there's a lot of this kind of AI writing software out there, but the
Sure.
problem in schools at the moment is I don't know if you're seeing this, some of it kind of changes the wording too much. It kind of takes that out of their words, completely
Yeah.
rips it out of their words. He's trying to create a version which fixes the issue that is dyslexia based
Yeah.
and leaves the rest as it stands because
Hmm.
that's a big challenge, right? Is so like if
Yeah.
you want to write an email, it'll fix the stuff that's really bad, but it won't reframe the whole thing so you're actually having a different conversation and it won't
Hmm.
sound like an AI robot wrote it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Exactly. You know exactly what you mean. Oh, that's really good. So yeah, I love if you can make that connection. That'd be good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I love what you're doing over there. But no, those are really good points. And what are you finding, I guess, with the older students that you're working with? Because I guess we get a bunch of teenagers, parents with teenagers,
Yeah.
different kettle of fish, right?
Yeah, definitely different kettle of fish. So there was one young man that I worked with and was able to just really hear what was going on in his life. So obviously, I came into the school and I told my story. Number one, there's like, can you please tell your story to our kids? So I told my story to them, and I started just tutoring them one by one. And so one student came to me and he just had the most concerned face. And I said, hey, what's going on, buddy? And he said, Mr. Long, is it okay if I ask you a question? I said, yeah, what's going on? He said, I've been really concerned about my future. I said, what have you been concerned about your future about? He said, I'm concerned that me having dyslexia will go on my permanent record and I'll never be able to get a job. And he's in the ninth grade, you know? And I said, no, buddy, that won't be your story, you know? I said, look at Mr. Long. Remember I told you how I was able to overcome things and look where I am now, yeah? And he said, yeah. And so I told him, and then you could just, as I told him that, you can see this weight had just came off of his shoulders, because you could see that he had been carrying that a long time. And it's not, just because you struggle with reading doesn't mean you're not intelligent and you're not aware of the future, right? And so that was one of the things that really stood out to me. Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. I've just actually recorded a podcast on the inner work, that you have to do as a dyslexic, and I think it's coming out Thursday tomorrow. It'll
Okay.
come out
Look forward to
tomorrow. I
it.
mean, but it's exactly what you're saying there, mate. It's we all think it's reading, writing, and spelling that's the biggest challenge, but it's overcoming those internal conversations that have happened because of dyslexia. And as we mentioned before, it's the getting knocked back with reading, writing, and spelling. It's feeling that you're stupid, feeling that you're dumb, all of these limiting beliefs that just keep knocking you back. And from what you said there, probably would mean more to him than any tactical or technical work you could do with him, because that moment, if he embraced that emotionally, that's a game changer. Like I remember chatting to a 9-year-old girl about this, and she said, I feel dumb. No one's told me this, but I feel really stupid and dumb. And I know her grandmother had spoke to her about that and made her feel, on the other side, who feels a bit stupid. Like, but I said to her, I said, when I was at school, I felt dumb. I felt stupid. Like I was a year older than her when I got diagnosed. I felt And I always remember when I was a kid and I got told I had dyslexia, the first thing I said was, at least I know I'm not dumb. At least I understand why I'm like this. And,
Hmm.
what you said to that kid, like, never stop being that emotionally open, because especially boys, even more than girls, but I think girls as well, all need to hear that they're not stupid, they have value, and, tomorrow's a new day, right?
Absolutely.
And going back to your experiences, and I'm so proud that you found a role that is helping other dyslexics and you're doing what you love, because like you can even see it on your face since our last catch up, is like you got this smile that's like, no, how lucky you are to be able to do this work, because it's so
Mm.
good. If you were to tell our listeners out there who maybe they've got kids, maybe they're young themselves, maybe they're at university. Maybe we could finish with, what are the three big things that you think, the three things that they should look at to support themselves in their learning experience? What are the three big biggies for you?
I would say get with someone if you're really young. I would say get with a counselor or a teacher and take it upon yourself to teach yourself how to advocate for yourself. The thing about dyslexia, it's not something that you'll grow out of. It's not like, hey, I didn't like macaroni as a kid, but I love it as an adult, right? As you can see, us today having this conversation, we both are adults, and this were diagnosed when we were a child, and so it's been going through this process and understanding that this will be something that you will have to have the rest of your life. It's not a sentence of a failure, but it does mean that you will have to think outside the box. Number one, so it definitely would be learning your self worth and learning how to advocate for yourself. Second part with that is find your brilliance. What I mean by that is if you're a really good storyteller, if you're really good at building, if you're really good at maybe writing, sometimes it doesn't affect that. Sometimes you're really good at math, then I want you to focus on what you're really good at first. And the third thing I want you to do is find the tools that you need to help you. When I do the fundraising part of this, when I talk with potential foundations and things of that nature, I say no one has a wheelchair ramp that's out and then 20 minutes later it's removed. Everything that if you have a physical disability, there's a wheelchair ramp, there's an escalator for you to go up, there's braille in all the hotels, and all everything's in place. So know what tools that you need and don't be afraid to ask for them and being able to use them inside of the workplace or even school. So if you need speech to text, there's nothing to be ashamed about. It's so cool now that everybody's saying I'm listening to Audible, right? So, I would say that would be really a key thing is make sure that those three major things, make sure that you have those in place. And then finally, the next thing is you have to build your confidence and whatever that looks like to you. You can't look at this as a weakness or a sentence of I'm going to be stupid the rest of my life, because that's not true, right? And I know sometimes that we look at folks like Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, and it can seem like they're 1,000 years away. They don't understand what's going on in my world, but they still had dyslexia. But they made a choice to say, this is what I've been given. I'm going to make the best out of it. And now every time you look at your iPhone, a dyslexia man helped put that together, And it's a technology that we use day in and day out of our lives. So you may not be an inventor, you may not be someone that, has that background, but there's something you're really good at. So I challenge you to find out what you're good at and focus on that, and don't listen to anybody say what's impossible or possible. If you put your mind to it, if you believe and you get the right tools and things in play, then you can definitely succeed whatever you put your mind to.
That's such a good message, mate, for everybody out there, adults and kids and anyone. Because, like, again, it's the thing that holds us back. And, a shout out to another one of our listeners, Cody, you know who you are out there. I know you're going through some stuff at work at the moment. Standing up for who you are, what you're great at. Everybody out there listening, you have things you are great at. And don't let the world knock you down. There's always more jobs out there. There's always something you're even more suited to. And, some workplaces will struggle with some tools, but get the tools that work, because, between me and my wife now, we've got a third person in our marriage called ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And you know, it's amazing, right? Like I sometimes find her chatting away. I'm like, who's she talking to? And she's chatting to her phone, and vice versa, me too. And like when you get to use these tools, what I've said recently to people, I've said like dyslexics, we have V8 brains with rollerblade wheels or roller skate wheels. That's our life.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, it's kind of like putting some big tires on your
Mhm.
brain and
Yep.
going, you can now get that brain to hit the road. And
Mhm.
it's not, and just remember, guys, once you're out of school, it's not cheating.
That's
There's no
right.
one watching over your shoulder, right? There's no one sitting there going, you shouldn't be using that tool, Bob. You know, if you can get something done, if you can achieve something with it, get out and do it. And, exactly what you've said, Philip, I think find what you're great at, find the tools that work for you and build your confidence, and don't take no for an answer from yourself. Don't say, well, that's okay for Philip or that's okay for Stephen, because it's not. It's we're all equal, we're not special. I was luckily born with these handsome good looks, but not just joking, guys. But you know what I mean? Like it's just, that confidence is just because I've chosen to be that confident. I didn't used to be. I made a choice, and that's who I am now. And I love who I am. I love what I've built. And I can see that in you, Philip. And mate, it's brilliant. Have you got any final words for our fantastic listeners out there?
Yeah, and I did want to tell you the other side of that story too with the two guys that I worked with. So after introducing them to the software with just a demo, they both increased their language art grades later. One did by 2 levels, another one did by 3 levels. So that is the power of just bringing in the proper technology. And so, what our biggest thing is that we're working on for the school is this is a smaller school where we're fundraising to get software, we're fundraising to get IT support, and we're working with a telecommunication partner here in the U.S. And we're just raising to get the rest of the funds so all the kids can have a laptop and a tablet to work from. Right now, they're sharing. So you imagine just to say like how we use our computers and how we use our phone all the time. Just imagine if we had to wait 20 minutes to use it or have it 1 second and then not have it for an hour and how frustrating that can be. So that's the challenge that we're having now. And that's what our goal is to be able to raise the fund and get the support so they can constantly have the software and constantly have the hardware that they need so they can continue to learn. Because even with the demo software, they did really well. And then 3 months later, I moved out to just help more with the fundraising part of things. And I circled back around to see how they went. And one went back down a grade, another one went back down 2 grades. So that's the difference
Wow.
of having that. So I love to be able to have that support behind us, and if anyone knows of folks who might want to support, then that's what we're trying to do is help these kids
Please,
get it.
yeah, Philip, we'll pop something in the show notes as well for you.
Yep.
So make sure you send me those links and we'll pop them down there. If anyone wants to support, Philip and the schools down in, am I right, Florida?
Yep.
Florida's
In
where you
Florida.
are,
Yep.
you're
Yeah.
based?
Yep.
Brilliant.
Northeast Florida. Yeah.
You know, yeah, so like again, like everyone out, what I find with dyslexics is everyone cares, everyone wants to give, and just, whatever it is. Sometimes it's just experience, knowledge, love, just
Yeah.
even good thoughts is brilliant out there, guys. Because like we're all trying to, everyone's trying to chip away, but it's brilliant what you're doing there, Philip. And I think it's so important to empower the kids of the future, right? Because without it, what have we got? Not much. Just a bunch of crazy old people, right? That's all we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Yeah. Shit.
I keep getting older. It's very, very painful. But it's no, awesome, Philip. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And I hope everyone enjoyed that. Remember, there is the other link to the last episode with Philip as well to hear a bit more about his story. And until next time, this has been The Truth About Dyslexia.